I was looking
Uh-huh.
forward to this. Can I just tell you why? Because I come from the world of improv in music. And I, in one sense, like I'm just as a drummer, I know how to read music. So you can give me the music played exactly, or you can throw me in a situation and say, Mike, just use your ears and figure it out. And I've learned to find the joy in both. So in one sense, it'd be great to have an outline. In another sense, it's kind of cool that we don't because it will actually form its own outline.
And I wasn't not looking forward to this because of the lack of scripting.
Running a successful business often means dealing with stress, burnout, and exhaustion. That's why prioritizing your mental health at work is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. Hi, I'm Leanna Lee.
I'm Mike Vini, and this is Better Mental. Join us as we share tools, tips, and strategies to help you build better systems for health and business growth.
Ready?
Let's get to work.
So for anyone out there who's not aware, which is everyone, this is a completely unscripted episode. We decided to do this spontaneously with no preparation other than when are we going to record? And this is like the third time we've rescheduled recording. So finally we just decided, fuck it, and we just went for it. So it's a Saturday afternoon here and we're just getting it together. And no, I wasn't looking forward to it because I just got out of a 10-day depressive slump and straight into a week of insomnia, which is fabulous. Ooh. So I did not even bother getting dressed today. I'm in my pajamas. I was able to wash my hair solely because I spent an hour sitting in the bath. I couldn't stand up. I was too tired to stand up in the shower and wash my hair. So I've been doing things in like small increments to maintain energy for this.
It's important to me.
And it worked too.
That you wash your hair. It's really important to me. It makes this podcast what it is. And you're a Leo, right?
I am, whatever that's worth.
So can I ask you a Leo question?
I don't know the answer to it, but sure. Maybe you will.
This is what I read in a book somewhere. So if I just tell you like, hey, you have really nice hair, will that mean I'm on your good side forever?
On my good side forever. I don't know. I mean, I would appreciate the compliment. It would depend on my mood, to be honest with you, because it also depends on how you're saying it and in what context. Because if you're being like Mike, my friend Mike, the guy that I've known for ages, I'd be like, oh, thank you. Obviously, you'd be on my good side because you almost always are. But if you're like some random guy just creeping on me and you'd be like, I like your hair, it's very different. It's very different. So I think it depends. I will say that once you get on my bad side, it's hard to get off of it.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's a Leo thing or not, but it is sort of trust once broken is lost forever type thing. I don't tend to give a lot of second chances, but I'm a very trusting person in some ways and very untrusting in other ways. With people overall, I like to kind of wait and see how things turn out. I don't think just because someone makes a bad first impression, they could still end up being my best friend. But yeah, once it's gone, it's gone. The magic never returns. So with that in mind, welcome to this episode.
Oh, yes. Welcome to this unscripted episode.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Leanna, and how is your mental health?
Yeah. So like I said, I just got out of a depressive episode. And it was a rough one. Because I seem to fall into these more often when I have a busy season at work. So the entirety of my focus and energy goes into completing my work and eating at least 2 meals a day and trying to get enough sleep. But I don't tend to eat a lot when I'm depressed. And one thing I discovered this time around, which it's so sad it's taken me this long, was smoothies. I drank my weight in smoothies this time. And it was fabulous because, when you're feeling down and you want comfort food and you want something quick, it tends to be greasy, salty, meaty, or potato chips or crisps or fries, I guess. And not only was I not that hungry, but I just felt like the thought of that greasy, salty, coagulated, cold food because I was not going to, I'm not going to stuff a whole burger in my face. It's probably just going to get cold and just be very yucky. But just being able to have something that was healthy and made me feel good and knowing that it was good for me, like the yogurt, and I put spinach in it and blueberries and orange juice and all of this great stuff. And just knowing that it was healthy for me and that I felt good eating it. It was easy. I could just plop it in this big giant mason jar and like sip on it for the next half an hour or whatever. It really helped. So I learned some things about myself this time. And I learned some things about my depression this time. I am doing much better mentally, but physically, one thing I've noticed over the past couple of years, especially as insomnia has become more a part of my mental health cycle for whatever reason, I recover a lot slower from these. Physically, I mean. It takes a lot more time to recover from the lack of sleep, from the lack of sunlight. I don't go out much when I'm really down or when I'm really depressed. And I want to hear about your experiences with depression. I told you this a few days ago, but my daily experience with these depressive slumps now, a couple years ago, they used to be a lot more violent in the sense that they trended a lot more suicidal, but they were over very quickly. It would be like a couple minutes or a couple hours or even a day or two. Now it's more like days into weeks, but I may have one really low period that lasts for maybe a couple hours within that week. Other than that, it's just a ton of brain fog, a ton of fatigue, a lot of frustration because I can't focus. And it's sort of that cyclical problem where you can't focus and you get frustrated. So you lose energy getting frustrated with yourself. And it's just continues and continues and continues until you're just exhausted. And then you have to climb up from that somehow. So it's interesting that it seems to be a lot more physical symptoms and a lot more annoyance and frustration and just lack of ability to complete tasks than actual like super low moods, suicidal ideation, extreme behavior. So that's been a really interesting. I don't know if I like all of the changes, but it's I suppose in a way healthier. It's less likely to end my life, but it's still extremely frustrating and not very healthy. So what about you? What is your day-to-day? Because you have major depressive disorder, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh my.
So what does that look like for you? I know we've talked about like being able to be happy and also have depression, but what is the energy level and the physical symptoms look like for you day to day?
Well, one thing that's really interesting is you and I speak about it very differently because my therapist, I would say I'm depressed, but she'd be like, well, what does that mean? What are you feeling right now? And so you'll not hear me say like, I'm in a depressive state. You'll hear me say I'm sad or I'm feeling like heavy today physically, or I'm feeling very, very tired or just out of it or irritable. So I'm really trying to actually get in touch with what's going on in that particular moment and also not assume it's always a depressive state. And that's something my therapist has taught me too. It's like, sometimes I would say, oh, well, I start to spiral at night. I usually start to spiral around a certain time. And she also reminded me that people get tired at night after a long day as well, too. Right. And so once we all start to get tired, we all get a little cranky. Right. So things like that. So I can't always say it's depression, but I'm learning to just be present in the moment. That being said, number one for me is taking my medication. I take depression medication every single day, and I got to make sure I do that. So for me, it's about checklists, making sure I do certain things. And this is just for health. For example, going for walks each day, trying to get myself outside and get fresh air.
Mike. I wasn't asking you for a checklist of like all the healthy things you do for yourself. I think that's great, and you can absolutely do that. But I was asking about your experience, like your physical symptoms.
I'm getting there. I promise.
Okay. You're just going into speaker mode, and I'm like, this is supposed to be like us talking about ourselves.
We'll get there.
Okay. So go do it.
So the thing is, for me, I have to do my checklist of things. And this is actually very important because I'm going to throw out a word we have never used on the show, baseline. It gives me a baseline of like where life kind of should be. So if I'm meditating twice a day, if I'm exercising, I know like I'm in a fairly good space, sleep is good. But for some reason, anything can happen that triggers the depression. I never know when it's going to come. Now, in terms of symptoms, it completely varies. And this is why I say it's a moment to moment thing. For example, I might have the greatest sleep in the world, but I can't get out of bed. I might feel so refreshed from my sleep. And it confuses me at first because I'm like, why can't I move? Is there like gravity against me? Like there's extra gravity in the world or something? No, it's just I'm depressed. That's a sign of major depressive disorder right there. You feel like you physically can't move. So when I start experiencing that, I know that there's something going on usually. Another sign typically for me is when I notice that I really start to get introverted and quiet and just don't want to deal with people and feel a lack of energy, actually. And you know me, I'm pretty energetic. I'm moving around, doing things all the time. And again, let's go back to my little checklist. I don't feel like meditating. I don't feel like going outside. I don't feel like doing anything. In fact, I start to stare at the couch or the bed. Say, I just need to lie down. I need to lie down. I take more naps and things like that. But that's something that, again, all those things can happen. One of those things can happen. But the real tough one for me is when it's at its worst. When my depression is like really hitting hard, it's a combination of sadness and physical pain.
Physical pain? Like
Yeah.
a stabbing? Or what do you mean?
It's not like an acute pain, but it's more like in my chest.
Like an ache?
Yeah, I guess it's like a very intense ache. But to the point where there's moments of actual like pain, and it's not something I can pinpoint exactly. Maybe it's in my stomach for a moment, maybe it moves around. And so you combine that with I can't get out of bed. I have no energy for anything. I'm feeling sad and now in pain. Like it's really bad and it spirals. So those are, things that I've experienced. And I also know though, back to, the idea of a checklist, having tools in those moments to help me deal with it. I don't want to say get out of it. I'm not going to say that because I don't think you can, but I think manage it. And so that's been a real victory in my life over the past few years is that, like you were saying, you said something powerful, that things have changed with how long you're feeling something for and all that, or how long you're depressed for. Back in the day, it was one thing, it was short. Now it's longer. I've been able to really shorten the cycle overall for the depression because of the tools that I have.
Yeah, I think I have fewer episodes, but they last for longer and they're less severe, but they're, again, kind of prolonged, which is interesting. And I've also been noticing new symptoms. Like, I still have, my ears are still ringing from the last episode. I tried cleaning them out and all that, but they're still ringing.
Ears ringing. I've never heard that one. Okay, interesting.
Tinnitus is apparently a thing. It's not super, super noticeable.
It's not just for us drummers.
But no, I guess not. And then my speech slurs. When my energy drops, I sound like a drunk person. I was on the phone with one of my sisters. She was trying to make me feel better. And my energy was at a real low point. And I kept stopping and like shaking myself and trying to remember what was just being said because I was just, brain fog was really bad.
I have that too.
Yeah.
I get that too.
And it was just like, I thought... Oh my God. I would do stuff like that.
So it's like an incomplete thought thing. Like you, I know for me, like I'll start like telling you about my trip to McDonald's. Like I went to, what was I saying? McDonald's.
Yeah,
that's
basically
how,
like that.
Yeah. And it, oh gosh. And it makes it like beyond challenging to do work.
Well, luckily for me, I'm a writer, so I don't tend to have to speak much, and I do not go on client calls when I'm in a depressive slump. That just doesn't. I just make sure that doesn't happen because I can't really do it. So I have to very much limit what kind of calls I'm on.
That's really interesting. Well, while you're doing that, something else that I want to say with that is like, there's something we have not talked about that I guarantee you when I say this is going to become an episode. And for those of you listening right now, if you are interested in hearing an episode on this, let us know. You can email us at teambettermental@gmail.com. And one of the terms that I hear a lot around this is masking. Masking.
What's that?
So masking means I could be heavily depressed right now. Heavily depressed to the point where I feel like I can't move. My body's in physical pain. I'm really sad. My speech is all over the place, but I am forcing myself to be like, hey, this is Mike Vini. How are you? And masking is something that people do to try to, I guess, survive in the world, because we need to look our best at work. We need to be at our best. We need to put our best foot forward. And as you said, you can't get on client calls like when you're like this. In my case, I have to be on regardless. In fact, it would destroy my career if I just started canceling calls for these major events, because it's like, they're looking at speakers to hire, and there's like 3 of us, and if one of us isn't going to show up, I mean, that says everything to them. It's like, okay, this person's not reliable, regardless of the fact that they know I might struggle, and that's what I'm talking about. So the thing is, on certain days, I have to, let's say I have to be on the news or something, I have to figure out how to put on this mask to make it seem like I am at my super high energy best. And here's the thing, after I'm done, I crash, and sometimes I get into a much worse mental state.
I think there's a lot to be said for that, because I was thinking about this recently, because obviously the spoon theory, right?
I know the spoon theory.
But I was thinking about how energy is more like budgeting, right? Because it's more like budgeting money. If you spend money, and if you spend too much money, you have to pay it back some way or another. You're taking out a loan from yourself, So if I have to use up, and this really came home to me during this depressive cycle. I'm going to talk about control in a minute, because this really ties in to our theme. Yeah, so this depressive cycle, I noticed this a lot more because I'm a morning person. I have more energy in the morning. But when I am in a depressive state, if I use up that natural kind of higher energy in the morning, I don't get it back. On a normal day, I have higher energy, and then it dips down in the afternoon, and then it comes slowly back up mid-afternoon. But when I'm in a depressive state, if I use up my energy in the morning because I'm like, oh, I feel good, I can do this, it's gone. There is nothing left after like noon. I've spent it all. And I've overspent it, and now I'm having to pay dividends or whatever. I'm paying interest. So that's kind of, and I'm trying to educate myself financially this year and learn more about money and investing and all this stuff. So money is on my mind right now. So I'm thinking about how to better kind of budget energy, if you will. And so that's been an interesting thing, because really the big thing for me this year, I mean, honestly, control has been really top of mind for me, because I didn't expect to have a really busy first quarter. That's actually fairly unusual for freelance writers. Usually it kind of starts slow and then ramps up throughout the year, maybe dips down in the summer, and then a pretty busy end of the year. But this time I had a super busy almost all the way up to the end of the year, and then a fairly short break, and then a super busy first quarter. Wasn't expecting that. Wasn't expecting this depressive cycle, because I had just gotten out of a long one in December. So it was way too soon for the next one. Way too soon. And so that was unexpected. And so there are a lot of things that are out of my control. Every single one of my projects that I'm currently working on, I kid you not, have been constantly delayed for different reasons. And it's happened over and over and over again. So I haven't had more than 3 days insight into most of my projects. I've had one delayed for a month, but other than that, I don't know from week to week what's going to happen. So that's been incredibly frustrating in one way, but also really good for me in another way, because it forces me to focus on the here and now and stay in the moment and figure out, okay, so I have this to do today. Where is that energy coming from? How am I going to budget that? How am I going to use that well? I've had to give up a lot of control, which I think you do with mental health and a lot with work sometimes.
Yep. No, I mean, that's the theme of our whole season.
Quite a learning experience, yeah.
And I know for me, I've been working with a lot of cash flow issues, which we got to talk more about on this show, because cash flow, money and mental health. I mean, just in general, right? Forget better mental. But when it comes to running a business or being a freelancer, and you own your gig and you got to get paid and just deal with all the things that come with that, right? All the things that come with that. But here's been the interesting thing, though. And I want everyone listening out there who runs their own business and has cash flow challenges to hear what I have to say. Despite the fact that cash flow has been a little bit tighter over the past month, and we're actually in a spot of turning things around. Like right now, I think I told you that the other day, we're turning it around. The thing is, because I have good systems in place that are showing me everything down to the cent, and I can project cash flow, and I have a system each week for monitoring it, my anxiety is not as high as it would typically be. And it's weirding me out, actually. So I'm in therapy saying to my therapist, like, I'm not that anxious, but I'm anxious because I'm not that anxious. so it's like
classic.
It's interesting, right? Control. I just got to have something, all right, to obsess about. But the thing is, here's the thing. My depression has been okay for the most part. I mean, it's been, I'm going to say mild over this time. Despite the cash flow issues, what would happen is when I get stressed out, we end up doing things that are destructive, escape activities. For me, it's McDonald's. Big Mac.
Nice.
I love it. and the thing is, I start going into that. And so this time, which is just a very unusual thing, is cash flow's been tight. My depression's been mild, but I'm actually, for the most part, on top of my own self-care each day. And that, I think, has mitigated the damage the mild depression and cash flow issues could have done during this time. Like, this could have been a much different conversation had I not had certain things in place. Is it where I want it to be? No. But it's been really, really cool to see this all happening at once and being semi-managed in a healthy way, dare I say.
Yeah, I've been noticing a few similar things as well. I mean, you've been, you've seen behind the scenes on what I'm trying to work on with finances, and it's been really interesting. I think you've said you've noticed some changes already, but it's been really interesting once you start to let go of some of the fear around money. And I mean, that sounds kind of woo. It's not really. It's kind of basic common sense, In my world, if you are too kind of wrapped up in the money, if you're too focused on it, if you need it too much, you're much more likely to make mistakes in business. You're much more likely to take on clients who aren't good for you, sign contracts you never would have if you had a buffer. And so that's just knowing that, and knowing that I really kind of obsess about it sometimes. I'm trying to pull back a little bit, and I'm already noticing that's giving me a little bit more freedom to have new ideas, to research new concepts, things I can do with whatever money I have, and to also be in some ways more careful about it too, in an interesting way. I'm like, oh, well, this is what I've got right now, because I'm trying not to look too far ahead and worry too far ahead. So if this is what I have right now, how can I do the best with what I have at the moment? So it's an interesting kind of like some themes going on here.
Yeah, well, I have a question though. So I'm going to ask you this as a friend.
Oh boy, that's never a good sign. As a friend.
We should totally pause this right now, but whatever. We're not. We're going to keep it rolling. Now, I'm asking you as a friend. I'm asking you as a business owner, and I'm asking you as a member of the Better Mental community, because you said some gold right there, and I want to know. So let's just say I'm struggling with money right now in terms of anxiety, stress, and it's eating me alive. You know this whole scenario, right? Can't stop thinking about it. You're trying to be positive, trying to focus on work, can't stop thinking about it. You just said, you learn to let go. What's like that first step to letting go of control of things with money?
Oh, geez. That's a terrible question to ask me, because I don't think it's, for me, it was very much, I look back and I've done it. There wasn't like a conscious decision made. I think it was more like me realizing that it's a problem, that I was obsessing, and that it was getting in the way of business growth and personal growth and spiritual growth also. Because lack of trust tends to tends to bleed over, and fear and anxiety tend to bleed over into a lot of different areas of your life, though. So if you believe in God or a higher power, and you're obsessed over something that is really outside of your control, those two things tend to clash quite a lot. So I realized that I needed a better foundation for what I believed about money and what I was going to do with it. And I was like, well, I don't even know what I'm talking about, really. Like, I'm obsessing about where the decimal goes and how much I'm spending on groceries a month, and getting upset because our utility bill is higher than normal, or we traveled across the country and to get the cheap tickets or something, when I don't even have a good framework for doing better with it. So it's weird how that, I guess it was just taking a step and realizing that I have a problem and then I need a better framework. I need to be able to be smart enough to say, this is what's going wrong, and here's some ways to fix it. And so that's I think that's when I realized, once that decision was made, once I realized that, I was like, I need to work on this more. That's when I started to see that there was more of I was able to take some of the emotion away from it, maybe, and look at it more academically and logically, because I'm studying it now like a subject. I'm going back to school, basically. So it's a part of my continuing education for the year. And being able to have a little bit of perspective, I think, is what's really helped. Does that answer your question?
Oh my gosh, it answers, the whole, who do you surround yourself with, Mike Feeney? And everyone's listening right now to the person that I surround myself with a lot, because
Same though. I got a lot of my book recommendations from you. I have this whole list of books that I'm supposed to read this year.
Send me that list so I can read it too. So the thing is, though, Leanna, here's what I think you just said. And for everyone listening, I really just want to take a moment, because you struck gold right now. You basically said that the key to all of this was awareness. Just being intentional about awareness. And through that, you discovered things. And you're still doing that. It's not like a one and done thing. But I think when it comes to depression, as we were talking about, and being stuck in a slump, what I've learned in therapy is that when I am just aware of what's going on, when I can be clear with myself and aware, doesn't necessarily change things, but it makes it more manageable. So I just think that's a really, really good thing that you brought up.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. That can apply to mental health as well. I think it's also important to recognize how different people's experiences are of the same exact things. I mean, depression, like your experience of depression is different to mine. Like, I talk about depression in the way that I do, which you specifically said that you try not to, because I don't have a disorder that makes depression part of my daily life. It's something that comes up for me every other month. Sometimes the breaks are so long that I almost forget I have it, like ridiculously, after 20 years. And then it hits me again and I'm like, oh, that's right, I have this thing. So I think I still put it in that box because it's still not something that I consciously manage when it's not there, if that makes sense. I don't proactively work on it. I have in therapy in the sense that I have walked myself out of suicidal ideation. But now that it's more physical, it's more embedded in my body for more prolonged periods, I'm like, okay, so this means that I have to be more proactive between slumps, between these episodes, day to day, and that will probably help even things out.
Checklist.
Oh, thanks. This is when he comes back. He's like, well, this is what I'm doing. But, like, as I was saying, everyone's experiences are different. And one of my sisters, she had her own experience with depression. And we were talking about, like, I'm trying to be more open with certain family members about what I'm experiencing, because I'm quite closed. I'm quite reserved usually.
Good.
And I'm trying to develop better relationships with my younger sisters. And so one thing I did was I let them know that I was struggling with mental health in the past few weeks. And they sent, love and encouragement and all of that. But the way that both of them talked about it, it was interesting because in a way it was a little grating. So we have such different experiences of depression that the way they wanted to help me was to get me to talk, was to get me to go out and do things, was to get me like involved and keep me happier. And I'm like, that's not how mine works. It was like we were having two separate conversations about the same topic, and it was so interesting. I mean, at the moment I was a little annoyed, but once I was able to step back a bit, I was like, this is so interesting. And that's why I wanted to ask you about your experience, because I'm like, maybe Mike and I just assume, because we've talked about it so much, but we just have never like talked about the day-to-day experiences in that way. So it's so interesting to know. And now I have like a couple more friends. I'm like, gosh, I need to check in on them and see what their experiences are.
Yes. And we'll just remember the definition of depression is actually it's a group of symptoms. It's a group of symptoms. You can experience one of them, all of them. So everyone is unique. So, to those of you listening, one thing I do want to say that I think also came out of you today, you gave us a lot of gold, Leanna. Like really, like one of the things that I'm loving is
I give the gold and he finds it and he's like, oh, there it is. And you polish it for me.
Yeah, that's the roles we have around here. But, you kept talking about like getting out of a slump. And I know for me that, I don't usually use the term slump because it can just happen any day. It's never for an extended period. It's just for whatever it's going to be. It could be a few hours. It could be a few months. And I have to go with it. The beautiful thing about that is it's taught me to give up control and say it's going to be what it's going to be, to the point where I've said out loud to depression at night, I come out in the living room and say, depression, you're here. It sucks, but you're here.
Yeah, no, I think I need to start doing that. I think I need to get out of this mindset that it is going to go away and then come back at like a much later date. And it's going to be like this finite boxed thing. I think my own idea of my depression is false. And that I need to because I think it actually might be inhibiting recovery a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't properly manage it if you wrap it up with a bow and give it a single definition. So I think that's something I need to be more aware of is how I think of my own PTSD has been like that as well. I told you about this. I haven't told our listeners a lot about this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I learned in the past 4 or 5 months how PTSD can really fucking come back to bite you when you relive traumatic episodes in your life. In my case, it's complex PTSD from ages and ages ago. But it really, if you find yourself in what your brain perceives as similar situations, it's like you're right back at the first traumatic incident. It's insane.
Right. Well, part of my company's mission is to support people in discovering the gift of emotional wellness. And I don't know if I've told you this, but that mission came out of pain. And even now when I look at it, it's painful to look at. Like I don't sit there and go, ooh, nice mission. No, it's painful because emotional wellness is about showing up for all your emotions, no matter what they are. And it's something I've had to learn each day. Like if the anger is intense, it's supposed to be here today and we're supposed to hang out with it. And years ago, what would happen is I would get so overwhelmed with anger or sadness or whatever that it would become overwhelming. So now I'm depressed and spiraling with anxiety at the same time. And it would just be this downward spiral that would sometimes get me hospitalized in the mental hospital. And now I'm just letting the feeling be that's supposed to be there and then treat it like it's like the friend that's supposed to be hanging out with me right now. And it has been a game changer. It really, really has. And I've said this, I don't know if I've said this to you, but even anger for me has become my favorite emotion, the most useful one you can have at work, actually. And it's led to so many beautiful things, but even sadness, when I'm feeling intense sadness, I am learning to see how that is a pathway to joy because it's showing me something, whether I want to see that or not. I mean, this is very new for me, and talk to me next year about it to see how I'm doing, make sure I'm sane. But that's something I'm learning about depression with myself.
So then I have a question for you, and it's control related, I guess. Do you think your depression will ever go away? Now, this is something that came up at the beginning of the season. I don't know if you remember, we were kind of like playing around with different ideas around control. And one was that we think we can fix things. And sometimes it's our business, sometimes it's our financial situation, sometimes it's our mental health. And I have often wondered, especially with some recent shifts in my mental health in the past couple of years, and whether they're for the better or the worse, which is something I'm still sort of sorting out in my head. Will this ever go away? And is that an individual thing? Or is that do we as humans in this, and, I guess let's just call it Western society for the moment, do we believe depression is something that can be cured? Is that just a cultural norm that we're all still kind of agreed on? Is that a mindset most of us still agree on? Or is that a false perception of mental health? And I think it's really the latter, but I think a lot of us with depression still think, maybe if I do this, maybe if I do kind of the rapid eye movement therapy or hypnosis, or I take this cocktail of drugs, or I do this and that, if I'm better at meditation, if I smoke weed more, if I find this combination, the right combination, it'll go away.
I think it's an individual thing. I've met people that have told me they've been cured of depression. And I'm not in their body. I can't say that that's true or not. I know for myself, I would like it to go away, and I don't want it to go away at this point. I would like it to go away because it really sucks. It just really, really sucks, and it wreaks havoc. You know that. I know that. And anyone out there struggling, I mean, many of you are listening are struggling even worse than us in ways that we'll never understand, But at the same time, my depression has taught me so much about myself, and it's been such a part of my life that I've grown to see it as a component of my life that I need to have because it's a great teacher. So if it were gone, I'd be confused, actually. I'd be like, what's going on, So that's my thought on that. I think for each individual, it varies, but I encourage you to think of it like this. We like to fix things like cars. My car was making some sound, so I had to bring it to the mechanic today. We want an answer. But when it comes to mental health, it's confusing, complex, and frustrating. And there's never one path. And even when you do find the right cocktail of things that work for you, it takes time and it constantly evolves. So that's my shortest possible answer to your very
I think that's a great answer. I think
deep
it's
question, but so I guess we're going to wrap up now.
Yeah. We've talked for long enough. We've talked everyone's ear off today. But thank you so much for this. I think this was a great idea. I love doing spontaneous episodes when I am struggling with insomnia. We should do this more often.
We got to do more of these, but to those of you out there who listen to us, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
We are just constantly seeing the numbers on this show going up. So just thank you so much for your support, and please share it with your friends or anyone who might find it helpful.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you so much to our team, our production and post-production team. You are just so amazing. And we'll do a better shout out on social media with links and everything. But just thank you for being part of our team, for supporting us, for helping make you're really large part of the reason Bitter Mental is what it is today. And we're just so grateful to have awesome people supporting us in this, especially when we deal with stuff that makes it hard to record and get together. And so thank you so much for that, and for everyone listening.
All right, everyone, be well.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the resources we mentioned or connect with special guests by checking out today's show notes at bettermental.fm.
And if you liked this episode, keep in touch by following us on your favorite podcast app. In the meantime, we'd love to hear what you think about the show, so DM or mention us on Twitter at BetterMentalFM.
Thanks again, and see you next time.